Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. First of all, if you're new here, I post new book reviews almost every single day. So if you're looking for some reading inspiration, you just like knowing what other people are reading, you like following book reviews, then maybe feel free to stick around. Now let's talk about today's book because we have a lot to discuss. Today I'm going to be reviewing volume 16 in the series Kaguya-sama Love is War. This is a viewer recommended series that I have been reading for a while. I have been loving, I've been having a great time reading, and I am going to talk about a lot of stuff that happens both previously in the series and in volume 16. So if for whatever reason you clicked on this video but you don't want to be spoiled about events that happen in volume 16, then maybe click off now or at least go and rewatch my videos 1 through 15 so you can have a better understanding of the story thus far and my feelings on the story thus far. With that being said, we're going to dive into volume 16. This volume tricked me, and I'm going to talk about why. And to talk about why, first I'm going to reference another series that I'm reading. You don't have to have read this series, I'm just going to reference it because reading these two things were very similar and happened around the same time in my reading journey. That sounds very poetic and fantastical because I'm not really on a journey, but I was reading and also reading the series Komi Can't Communicate. This is another series about the power of friendship, to be cliche, but there's also feelings and a love triangle. And there was a confession in the recent volume that I read, volume 23, I believe it was. And I knew something was up in this volume when I picked it out of the library. And because when I picked it out of the library, there was most of the pages were like white on the side, but there was a couple that were very clearly very dark, and I knew those were going to be full page illustrations, and I just had a gut feeling that something was going to be happening in this volume. I pulled it out, I looked at the pages, and I thought, we're getting our confession, or we're getting some big dramatic moment in volume 23 right around where these full page illustrations are. You just know these things. I feel like then, of course, when I went into volume 23 of Komi Can't Communicate, I was kind of a little bit emotionally prepared for the roller coaster. Now, to switch back to the series that I'm going to be reviewing, or at least volume 16 of the series that I'm going to be reviewing, Kaguya-sama Love is War. Let's back up one volume, volume 15. Volume 15 was a lot about our two main characters, Shirogane and Shinomiya, who have feelings for each other and don't want to be the first to confess. Both kind of became more vulnerable with each other and talked about some of the things that they fear. They fear showing the other person their weaker sides, their flaws. And volume 15 was a lot of character growth and discussion of their internal lives and the struggles and backgrounds and histories of both of these characters and the things that they struggle with. And something that I mentioned in my review of volume 15 is, well, I think that was very essential, and I feel like that was going to set up a lot of stuff that happened in previous or in future volumes. I was worried that maybe like the action was going to stop and we were going to stall out and we were just going to be stuck with like deep emotional internal monologue thought sort of section for a while of the series. I had nothing to worry about. So volume 16 tricked me because I opened it, and in the first scene, very beginning of the book, very close, first scene, we have Shirogane and Shinomiya in the student council room alone, but they are acting in ways that they have not acted in public with one another ever. Of course, no one else is in the room with them, but they're being very close and touchy-feely, and immediately I was like, first of all, I wondered if I had read volume 15. I was like, did I actually read volume 14 and I missed a volume? Because they were not this like close and being emotionally vulnerable with each other in the student council. Like, they've had little moments here and there before, and of course, they did wind up kissing on the roof during the cultural festival, but they did not have this level of closeness or like emotional intimacy in volume 15. So I was like, did I miss a volume? I actually shut the book, I flipped it over, I was like, okay, this is 16, to make sure I wasn't reading 17. I went back over to my shelf and picked up volume 15 and read it, or looked at the last couple pages to make sure I had finished volume 15, and I was like, okay, so this is intentional, because I had no clue what was going on. Kashiwaga, who's this girl that we know, walks in, and then they immediately act like they weren't close to each other, but then she leaves, and I was still confused because I was like, I didn't realize they were this comfortable, like they're acting like they're dating. And so I was acting like they're dating, but acting like they don't want anyone else to know that they're dating. But I was like, this was not where we left off in volume 15 at all. That had not been established in volume 15, so I was a little bit confused. We also know, because they're back in school, that winter break is over, which I don't believe winter break was concluded in volume 15, so I started to put 2 and 2 together very slowly, I know, and I was like, we had a little bit of a time jump. And winter break appears to have been a big, I almost said mean, a big turning point in the series and in the relationship, or the budding relationship between Shinomiya and Shirogane. And we have people with broken arms. We have Yushigami, who apparently has had a very emotional roller coaster of a break. That was a sentence to spit out. And as a result, I was like, okay, we've had a time jump. And sure enough, the author goes, let's rewind and discuss what happened over winter break. In which case I was like, okay, I am reading the right volume. I didn't miss anything, because I was a little bit confused. So if you're reading volume 16 and you're a little confused at the beginning, it's not just you. I also was like, did I miss a volume? Am I reading the right thing? Because this was not where we left off in the last volume. Volume 16, a lot happens. And this is where I'm going to get into spoilers, so if you don't want anything to be spoiled, then stop here. But up to this point in the series, the first part of the series, up until I forget the volume number, because this kind of has all blended together because I've been reading it so quickly. The first part of this series, our two main characters, Shirogane, Student Council President, and Shinomiya, Student Council Vice President, were locked in some sort of war, battle of the wits to get the other person to confess, because they had feelings to one another. But their feelings, not only without revealing them, they've also been deepening. So they really are falling for one another hard, and they both want to confess. They're both reaching the point where they don't want to wait any longer, particularly because there's been a new development. Shirogane has decided to go study in the United States, and the way that the Japanese school calendar lines up with the American school calendar doesn't really match. So Shirogane is not going to be able to finish the entire high school in Japan. I think they said he has like 10 months left. So if Shirogane and Shinomiya want to let the other person know how they feel about each other, they are going to have to confess, and someone's going to have to make the first move. And volume 16 is where things kind of come to the head. I think especially Shirogane. Shinomiya is also reaching this point, but we've seen a lot of growth from Shirogane in the sense that he doesn't want to keep waiting around. He doesn't want to wait. He especially is the one who's putting that time pressure on, because he's the one who's leaving. Excuse me. So I feel like he knew this. Shinomiya, I feel like her work was a lot more internal. She had to kind of admit to herself first that she had feelings, while Shirogane, I feel like, kind of was a little bit more open with himself that he had feelings, while Shinomiya kind of tried to keep that locked in for the first couple of volumes, that she had feelings. She was still trying to do the cold, aloof thing, but Shinomiya is working on herself, Shirogane is working on herself. Then they started to kind of confess a little bit to each other. Having that news that Shirogane is not going to be there forever, and of course that high school is a limited period of time, kind of added that time pressure, and I feel like that's when they started being more open. They realized that conceivably, if neither one of them makes a move, if neither one of them swallows their pride, they're going to reach the end of their high school career and neither one will have said something to each other, and then it's going to be a major regret for their life, that they never actually said to the person that they were falling in love deeply with that they had feelings for each other, and they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their life, basically. That sounded very dark and dramatic, but I mean, it's possible that their paths are going to split in the future, and having not said what they want to say to the other person could be something that becomes a regret or weighs on them a little bit as they go through life or as they continue past high school. So at this series, in volume 16, we really see Shinomiya and Shirogane, especially after kind of being more open with each other in volume 15, come together and be like, listen, we clearly have feelings for each other, and they decide that they want to confess to one another. They want to make that move, they want to swallow their pride, and they want to be their desire. I feel like this is the volume in which their desire, if this is their pride, if this is their desire not to be first, and this is their feelings for each other, it's like for a long time their pride was higher than their feelings for one another, but slowly throughout the series it's been going like this, where they've been more and more open, and we finally switched the other way, where their desire to be with one another is more strong than their pride, and they're willing to swallow it to be with one another. But this was a huge moment. They do wind up confessing to each other around the same time after going on a date, like they're together, but that's not even half the story. We have a whole nother subplot that is developed in volume 16, which is why I feel like I was on some sort of roller coaster, or I was being yanked around, where I was like, is there a time jump? Oh my word, they're confessing to one another. What's going on with Yushigami? Because Yushigami now has a subplot. Yushigami, if you need a brief reminder, is the student council, I think he's the treasurer. Yes, he's here. He's kind of a little bit of a loner, a little bit of a nerd. He likes his video games and his anime. He has this reputation around school as being like a bad kid, but if you know his backstory, you know that he wound up, his actions in middle school or in early high school, whenever it happened, were to protect someone, and they were misconstrued as him being violent towards someone, and as a result things kind of got turned around and he has this bad reputation. He also has feelings for an older girl, but Yu Ishigami's love life or personal life I feel like has never been that complicated. I feel like he is a character who has background and who the author Aka Akasaka has devoted some time to, so we do know that we know his challenges, we know some of his struggles, we know his backstory, but his love life and his day-to-day life has really just been more of a supporting character to the whole Shirogane Shinomiya situation. He's been there from the very beginning, from like volume 3 or 4, I forget when they introduced him. I actually really like him as a character right away. I liked the way he kind of played as a foil to Fujiwara's excited energy. He's kind of a little bit more subdued, quiet. He has a little bit of fear of Shinomiya. He finds her very intense and therefore very scary, but Ishigami has kind of been this quiet, steady, comforting presence in the student council. So I've never really thought about his love life. We knew that he had this thing for this older girl that he was on like a cheer team with, but nothing else has really happened with Yu Ishigami's love life until volume 16. In volume 16, Ishigami's love life goes from nothing to like some huge implosion. We have a rejection, we have a situation in which Yu Ishigami is offered a thing that he wants without, but not in the situation that he wants, and we also have a developing love triangle in which other people are getting involved with Yu Ishigami. Basically, he goes from having just this little tiny crush to having a whole situation blow up. I also want to take this point to warn, I don't know actually how they rate the back of these books. I do really appreciate the fact that manga series kind of let you know what you're going to get into. If you flip the back of a book over and it's rated for kids versus if it's rated for older teens, you kind of know the vibe of the book, because I do sometimes think, and maybe sometimes you can tell by like the cover, but sometimes you can't tell by the cover what's going to be inside. This whole series, I believe, has just been rated teen, and the back of this is rated teen, and it was shelved in the teen section of the library. Also, I do not like a lot of explicit sexual content in my manga. Just not my cup of tea. I don't care if other people like it. I don't think it's like wrong. I just don't like it myself in my manga that I read. And so therefore there's nothing really explicit in this volume, but things are there's a lot more sexual overtones, I'm going to say, that are introduced in this book. So if that's not your cup of tea, I know some people don't like that at all. If that's not something you like reading or are comfortable with, then you might find that upsetting or maybe shocking or surprising in volume 16. It's never really been, like I said, this isn't a book for kids, so it's not like they've shied away from anything in this series, but I feel like things are just more openly discussed in volume 16 than we have in the first 15 volumes, especially with Yu Ishigami's subplot. So I think that if you've read the first 15 volumes, then maybe some of the more, I don't want to say forward, or I feel like, yeah, the sexual innuendos or the sexual content's a little bit more forward, but it's not explicit at all, because if it was explicit, then I would be giving this a much poorer review, because that's not really my cup of tea. And also, you know, it's not going to be too bad because it's still rated teen, so they didn't bump the rating up to older teen for something that's a little bit more explicit. For reference, I'm also reading these series, no matter how I look at it, it's you guys' fault I'm not popular, which I believe is actually rated older teen, and also I can definitely handle just fine. There's nothing too crazy in that. So just something to keep in mind though, because I was like, wow, we haven't really addressed a lot of this stuff between these students before, and people's love triangles are heating up, spicing up, so that's just something to keep in mind for volume 16. Overall, I loved this volume. I went in, I feel like because I was surprised, I was very drawn into the volume. And that's not to say when I was reading Komi volume 23, I wasn't drawn in, but I wasn't as surprised. I knew what was coming. I knew the closer we got to those full page illustrations, there was going to be something going on. So I kind of expected it. So I still liked it, and I still liked that confession and that series, and I like the love that's going on there. But this one, because I had no clue when it was coming, it was a total surprise when this confession was going to happen. Well, as volume 16 progressed, I kind of saw that that's where things were trending, but I didn't know the actual page anything was happening on. When I started this series, or when I started volume 16, the the confession happened in the time jump backwards. So at the beginning of volume 16, I was very confused as to why these people were very, very close. And the whole thing was a big surprise. And I feel like I liked the way that that was done, because I feel like as a reader, I couldn't predict that and therefore try to like mitigate my expectations. I was just sitting down with another volume to see what happened, and wham, a ton of stuff happened. We have a whole subplot with Yu Ishigami's romantic life. We have Shirogane and Shinomiya actually confronting their feelings and maybe trying to develop some sort of relationship there. We just have a lot of stuff happening, and as a reader who wasn't prepared, I feel like that surprise was also a little enjoyable. It was like a pleasant surprise, and I liked that pleasant surprise quite a bit. Volume 16 was great. I have not read Volume 17 yet, but I do have it checked out of the library, so I want to read it because I'm so excited to see where this series goes. If you have any thoughts, comments, if you can think of any other series that you think I should read, please let me know. Because I would love to get suggestions. I love reading your comments. I love hearing about what I should read next. I know someone suggested a lot of manga series in a previous video, so those are definitely on my to-read list, but anything else that anyone would like to add, I love to get suggestions. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.